Hey guys, well, welcome to the podcast. And recently, I've been having a lot of guests around spirituality, healing, energy, trauma, law of attraction. And I'm really happy to have a guest on today, Dr. Rita Louise. She's a naturopathic healer, energy healer. She's actually written a recent book, Dang It Was Me All Along. It's going to be a really fantastic conversation. Anytime there's spirituality, in energy healing. I'm really fascinated in this topic. Rita, I hope I can call you that. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. And yes, you can call me that.
Yeah. Excellent. Let's get right into it. I know all about you, but talk about your story, your journey, and I'm excited to dive into the questions.
Okay. And I'll try to put this in a nutshell because I'm old and my story's long. And this was a fairly recent revelation. I've had two loves in life as far as what I wanted to do. My first one was I wanted to be an archaeologist or anthropologist. But then when I found out you needed to have a PhD, I put that to the side, but got turned on to in the day, it was ESP. The Amazing Kreskin had ESP. And I just started reading up on that and became very interested in it. And so we're talking, I was like 12 or 13. And I have just stayed on that course pretty much my whole adult life. Although I do venture into ancient mysteries and mythology and ancient alien stuff, which really satisfies that archaeology part of me.
Hmm.
So pretty much that's my life. That started at around 12. I went to the Berkeley Psychic Institute. I got my undergraduate degree, blah, blah, blah. Went to the Berkeley Psychic Institute, studied with them, discovered very early on in the process that I had been very intuitive my whole life, but no one ever connected the dots for me. So that's what I'm supposed to do. While I was in that program, and then shortly after graduating, I realized that one of my really strong gifts is being able to see into people's bodies, dysfunction that's going on, as well as being able to share with them core beliefs or limiting emotions that keep them trapped in disease, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual, which caused me to go back to school, get my degree as a naturopath, and then a PhD in natural health counseling. And in the meantime, with all of this, I've written 7 books. I hosted a radio show for 10 years. I have a new podcast. I'm just a busy girl.
That's a really wonderful introduction. And
Thank
so
you.
I'd love to get right into it. And it's really interesting because I had similar experience as you when I was younger. I could like I had strong intuitions, and when I was growing up, like into my adulthood, like these strong intuitions would tell me, "Don't do this, don't do this, avoid this person, don't." And then all of a sudden, when I reached my career, all of a sudden, like when I reached out to the universe, I would never get answers, and I would always have to rely on my intuition, which I guess that's honing. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm really happy. One thing is talking about is one of the big movies that really resonated with me was The Matrix, and it's talking about people just sleepwalking. And so, intuition is that. How do you develop intuition if you're just daydreaming through life? You get up, you get in your car 9 to 5, you go home, and like, how do you awaken your gifts?
Sure. But it's interesting because I really talk about that in that Dang It Was Me All Along book. And really the key to, and I'm going to say conscious living, is about being aware and about paying attention to what's going on inside. When you brought up a little earlier about the law of attraction, and it's interesting because I have talked about all of this stuff and about awareness and about how we project energy. And when we probably will get into all that. And I ended up including a chapter about the law of attraction because so much about paying attention to your inner world. And if it feels good, do it. And if it doesn't feel good, don't do it. Or if you're getting these prompts, follow through on them. And those tenets, that basic philosophy is the basis of the law of attraction. And so I included it in there because I'm like, hey, if I get $1 million or a new car, I'm game. And it really does work. That's the part that's amazing, is that it does work. And what I find personally, because some of this was really like an adventure into myself, writing this book, was that, and I call it bad brain. On days that I had bad brain and I would be like worried about something or ruminating about something or whatever, all this bad stuff, and like not necessarily bad, but not necessarily desirable things would happen. And I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I've met a lot of mediums and channelers and intuitives, and everybody has their distinct gifts and styles. And it's like, and they manifest their gifts in different ways. One previous guest just before you, she was an energy healer. And my question was, I didn't get a really good answer is, so for example, let's say we all go through life with baggage and trauma, whether, somebody stole from you or you were abused or discriminated, raped, or anything, right? And then, so talk about the energy field and as a result of trauma and how you can heal your energy field to manifest your dharma or your destiny, because a lot of people, they undergo these traumas and they end up with these really low energy fields and they attract all these bad things and they continue to go through life repeating the same thing, dating the wrong people, getting into drugs, addictions, food. Talk about that.
So when we experience trauma, it sits in our body. And so, and I'll just say, working as a medical intuitive, so I might have somebody that comes to me because they're having a gallbladder issue or they're having a lung issue. And when you poke around, you always find their trauma because it doesn't just sit in the auric field, it sits in the body, it sits in the etheric body, and then radiates out into the auric field. And even people, I'll say, "Oh, when you were 23, I just feel like you were betrayed and blah, 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 blah." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, I was in a relationship and he cheated on me. But I'm over it." And I'll look at them and go, "You're not, because it's still sitting in your body. Because if you were over it, I wouldn't find it anymore." But many times that trauma creates programs inside of us and it causes us to do something or not do something. So if we are constantly yelled at when we're a child, we might think, and I want to say twice, but probably be like 100 times about speaking up for ourselves and putting ourselves out there or having a boundary. Many empathic people, especially ones that have suffered trauma, have no boundaries. And so we find ourselves getting into these patterns because we think life is supposed to change and these people are supposed to change. But the reality is, and really that was the premise of the book, because after for me, multiple toxic relationships, I finally came to the light bulb moment that I was really the only one there. I was the only one left. And it's okay. So maybe I need to change me and that fundamental thing and go from there. And it really is about, again, becoming aware and becoming conscious and going, okay, so let's talk relationships because that's the easiest one, I think, for people to understand. So you start a new relationship and the person that you're with says something very dismissive, or they make a date and then they don't show up and you get that hour later phone call. And so someone that doesn't have boundaries or has attachment issues because they were ignored growing up or they need love or whatever their inner programming is, will sit there and just accept their excuse and be upset because they flaked on them, but then take the person back. And then 6 months later, the person does it again. And so then after a couple of years, you're like, oh, this person's toxic. Versus stopping and going, okay, they didn't show up. Now my inner world is upset and I'm in a tizzy. And it has pushed every single one of my abandonment issue buttons, which is something that I need to work on. Do I want to give this dynamic more energy? Or do I want to take a step back and say, I'm not happy and I don't want to do this again? And sometimes you can have a conversation with the person, like a real honest conversation with the person, and it becomes a non issue. Because the reality is, all of your buttons got pushed. But when those buttons get pushed, that's the time to stop. That's the time to take a step back and go, okay, do you want, how does this fit in for me? And is this something is this something I want to do? Now, I made that comment it was a meeting of the Lions Club locally, little dinky group, but they asked me to come do a presentation. So I do this presentation and I was talking about having boundaries, but I didn't use the boundaries word, but loving yourself and making that decision. Is this making me happy or is this not making me happy? And I'll tell you what, there was hate for me at the end of this presentation because I said that, because they were just going to be willing to give up their energy, even though the person they're giving it to is toxic. But we're trained to do that. And if you come from trauma, you're trained, especially if early childhood trauma, you're trained to be hurt. You're trained to be abused. You're trained to deal with your internal feelings. And then after a certain amount of time, circle back and rejoin the family because you can't leave. You can't go anywhere. And so that's the program. And so it's, oh, yeah, that's what I do all the time. And it's scary. It's scary to say, you know what, I'm not going to re-engage. For so many people, I don't want to say they can't do it. They choose not to do that.
Yeah, really powerful. Because another I recently heard is that anytime something like a setback or like a boundary is crossed, he was like, he takes a step back and said, "How did I contribute to this, or how did I allow this to?" And one of the best things I learned during residency is be consciously aware of the different energies that are going on, and understand, once you understand the energy play and the dynamic, you can avoid situations that can get you in trouble. And before, I would always attract like weird situations, people, circumstances, just absolutely just weird stuff. And I think it's because of this energy dynamic. So you mentioned you can sense trauma in the body. And what's interesting is after practicing like yoga and all these different things, like there's actually a lot of chronic patterns of tension that you're not consciously aware of. And so, how does
Mhm.
one begin to discover the unconscious places where they are storing the trauma and the tension?
So that's a great statement because, okay, and I'm going to back the conversation up just a tad. So we are made of four subtle bodies and our physical body: the causal body, the mental body, the emotional body, and the etheric body.
Mm.
And so when, and I'm air quoting, disease starts, it starts in the causal body and starts to filter down. And so if you're experiencing tension in your physical body, it means this issue has been with you so long that it has filtered through all of these bodies. So now you're feeling it on a functional level. And then people ignore that. They ignore that part and it will filter down potentially into an organ or some deeper level of disease. And so I tell people, start paying attention to what's going on. Start paying attention to that. It's the negative thinking. It's really all tied. If you sit there and start paying attention to what you're thinking in any given moment, well, not any given moment, but a lot. Okay, I'm going to share a statistic, and I will forget who it was, the National something Science Foundation that identified that 80%, 80% of most people's thinking is negative. I was like, holy crap. It made me feel a little bit better that I wasn't the only like totally negative person out there. But once you start paying attention to the negative thinking that you have, and even if you start writing it down, what each person will notice is that there are usually a handful of things that keep coming up and coming up and coming up. And those are the things that are creating limitation in them. I had a client and we were making a list of the negative thinking. And I'm like, okay, this is your homework. I want you to just make this list of whatever. And she came back and three-quarters of the list all revolved around the topic of not feeling respected. but she had different words at all time that were different words, but the essence was she always felt disrespected by people. Like she was just stupid and she couldn't manage her life. And so we started working on that concept because it was clearly 75% of her thinking was all revolving around that one area. And she, I don't want to say she had a drug issue, but she did partake more than I felt was being healthy.
Mhm.
Health.
Yeah. Which brings me to my next question is because you talk about this empath narcissistic dynamic. And what's interesting is that for example, like empaths or intuitives or highly sensitive people, like when you go, like, for example, like I can step off the plane in Los Angeles and I can instantly feel this tension in my chest, like this rush, like, it's like, you have to, you got to do this. And then like you step off into Honolulu and it's like, it's just very cool and easy. So how does one for empaths and these highly sensitive, how do they protect their energy from narcissists and bullies and especially in the workplace, like medicine, I'm sure finance, law, you have a lot of psychopaths, sociopaths, you have narcissists. And how do you protect yourself against these manipulative energies?
So there's the energy part. So one of the things that I found is that there is a very high proportion of empathic people that tend to get in relationship with narcissists. But, and there's a big but, usually it's an unhealed empath. It's an empath that has experienced a lot of trauma.
Uh,
And many people don't understand that when you're an empath and there's an argument going on in the other room, it's like you can feel it. And when you're a child, it's like you feel it,
mm,
which can create trauma all by itself, even if it's not directly happening to you. Okay. So with that said, so there's dealing with the feeling part. I always joke around like Walmart. Oh my God, I'm good for about 15 minutes. And sometimes I actually get the stuff on my grocery list because it overwhelms me. So knowing what you can tolerate and what you can't tolerate and what your warning signals are of, okay, I'm on overload or whatever. That's a self discovery part.
mm,
But with the toxic people, with the narcissists, it is all about having boundaries. And I'm going to change that word because boundaries are really important. But the basis of boundaries is loving yourself enough. It is the ability to love yourself enough and go, you know what? That's not healthy for me. And I am choosing to love myself and walk away from the situation. And it might be hard. It might be super hard, but it's loving. And I think if you own it in that mindset, it makes it easier. It makes it so that you can own it and go, you know what? I'm loving myself. This is a very loving thing to do as you go in the other room with the box of Kleenex, but that's okay. That's okay.
yeah.
Because people that are narcissistic or psychopathic or whatever, they are chronic manipulators. Oh, I just want to talk to you. And they're very good at getting energetic hooks into you and appealing to the healer part. Because many times people that are empaths they want the energy to be comfortable. They want the energy to feel good. And so if it doesn't feel good, they will often go into what do I need to do to fix this, which may or may not be the most healthy thing to do. I know I tried that. That was my strategy for a really long time. I would get into a situation that was uncomfortable and I would try to fix it because I thought it was the best way to deal with my discomfort versus saying, you know what, this isn't working for me and I'm going to go now, which is my new strategy. It's, yeah, I can't do this. Gotta go.
Yeah. It's
Because
interesting.
we're not taught. Okay.
Yeah. So go ahead, finish your thought.
No, I was just going off on a different thought, but you were going to say something. And I know it was going to be really interesting. So I'm just be quiet.
No, it was interesting because like I used to be in a codependent relationship with my career. It was like I needed my career. I was like, I need this. I was basically, I have to do this. And it was basically manifesting like in my chest, in my heart, and it was like leading to like palpitations and almost collapsing. And I'm like, man, I got to get out of this, otherwise I'm gonna die, right? And then once I got out and healed myself, like I no longer tied my identity to my career or work. It was like magic is gone. But which
I'm just going to suggest that there might be something deeper, that there was a survival need to have a certain amount of income or to have income or recognition. I think there's a deeper level, the things that the job provides us.
yeah. Yeah. There's and what's interesting is like when you talk about this empath narcissistic dynamic, and like for example, when I started to like this healing and this process where I would literally like people bully me, I would stand up to them, and all of a sudden the first time it's hard, but then after that, when you're willing to fight for your rights, they just disappear. And one thing was like I have a colleague, she basically very beautiful, and but she always has trouble with maintaining stable relationships, trouble with men, kink, and just casual encounters. And then after her final, she was like, yeah, I'm not gonna date anybody for a year or two. I'm gonna get this sort of fixed out. I'm not gonna get into any rebound relationships. And it was interesting as she started to heal what you are describing, this process of boundaries, not going there and standing up for yourself. She started to, her energy started to, and she started to attract better people. And she didn't have this savior complex. So, what advice would you have for people like calling this dynamic? It could be relationships, it could be finance. For me, it was career. I needed that validation. I needed that title. It was good. And if the universe gave it to me, I would have self-destructed, like you see on like what's his name? The Friends guy, Matthew, Matt Perry, or Anthony Bourdain, that would have
Mhm.
happened to me. So how do they break free?
I think part of it is to start separating out who you are and what you want, and then the ego. Because the ego says, go do, create, hurry. You got to get that brass ring or you suck. And that's the ego talking and driving you forward. And I think the telltale of that is if you're getting that push, but you're not getting the satisfaction out of it, or you're not feeling good. So I've been told that I maybe could be a little bit of a workaholic. I don't know. Maybe it's possible, but I'm also very passionate. And once I start down, I think spirit is saying, oh, you need to do this. And then I do it, but then my ego gets in the middle of it and it's okay. And it becomes this bigger thing. And so it's being able to start separating it out. But it's all a process. I tell my people it's a process. So you said no today. Yay, let's do the I said no dance and have that all be good. But if you don't say no tomorrow, that's okay because you did it once and you're going to do it again. So it's not about beating yourself up. It's about learning about yourself and evolving and growing, because really that's what life is all about. And my hope is that I've learned enough that I don't really have to come back for a while, and then it's all good. That's been my goal.
Yeah, beautiful. The next part of this question is once you start to establish boundaries, and one movie that really resonated with me or that was Goodwill Hunting. And in the beginning of the movie, Matt Damon, he holds a lot of anger and resentment. Like he creates boundaries. He's willing to fight, but he can't let go. So he sees some kid that bullied him when he was 5 years old, and he just puts him in the hospital. And what's the difference between putting up boundaries and revenge, and how do you let go?
Okay. You have great questions. So, as part of us, we have our stress response system. So, there's fight, flight, fear, or fight, flight, freeze, the flight, fight, flee, freeze. And then there's been a fourth one added, although it's a learned response, which is fawn.
Yeah.
And so the two, so fight means you're going to put up your dukes
Yeah.
and fight. Flight means something happens and you're out the door, or you're crossing your arms and detaching. And then freeze is like a deer in the headlights, where you just are like, oh my God. And you get overwhelmed and you're just not dealing with it. And so Matt Damon was trapped in a chronic fight stance. And
Mm.
so, yeah, he had boundaries, but he was like ready to fight anybody
Yeah.
that came up, which was dysfunctional in and of itself. But there are people that are trapped in their stress response. And so understanding how that manifests in you. So, like for me, I tend to be a white freeze. I'm really good at freeze. And with freeze, it's about you dissociate. So there's someone like blah, 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 blah. Like I'll tell a true story. So my mom, she would yell at you and she'd be like, blah, blah, blah. But then she would start talking in Spanish, and
Mm.
I don't speak Spanish. She'd be yelling at you. You really didn't know what she was talking about, but she'd be yelling at you. And I would just like internally turn down the volume and just go somewhere else mentally. I am very skilled at it
Mm.
because I've had years of practice in doing that.
Yeah.
And so one of my practices has been, what do I need to do to be more present
Mm.
and be in the moment and not be spaced out thinking about what am I going to work on tomorrow? People that activate their fight response, especially if they're trapped in it,
Mm.
they really need to look at that and allow themselves to maybe be more vulnerable because obviously they have some trust issues going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating. I love this discussion. How can people find out more about you and reach out to you? And you have a lot of wisdom and just follow your socials, check out your work, and work with you.
Sure. My webpage is soulhealer.com, soulhealer.com, soulhealer.com. And it has all of my books on there, including the book that I just showed you. Dang, it was me all along. And actually, the companion book, which we've talked about, but I didn't pick it,
Mm.
is called The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and Narcissist.
Yeah.
And so I feel like one talks about that relationship dynamic, and then the dang book is what you can do to fix it.
Yeah.
But I'll share this with the listeners because this is really fun. Every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Central, I do a live stream where I offer free on air psychic readings. I do a little 15-minute thing at the beginning covering topics from like toxic lettuce and having boundaries, or right now we're talking Tillians. And then I open it up where people can get a reading online. And the best way to participate in that is by going to YouTube and going to my YouTube channel, which is Just Energy Radio. So that's 3 words, Just Energy Radio. 7 p.m. Central, click the live link and it will let you get into the chat and you can come and hang out and get a reading.
Excellent. Really fascinating conversation. And thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. This is great. This is really good.